I want to be transparent with you. This video is a little longer than usual. That's because we didn't want to rush through something this important. Setting boundaries touches your identity, your self-worth, and years of conditioning. So instead of quick tips, we've taken the time to explore what actually creates real, lasting change. My hope is that by the end, you won't just know how to set boundaries. You'll understand why it's been so hard, and you'll finally feel ready to stop abandoning yourself in the process. You already know how to say no. You've known since you were a child. The word itself is 2 letters. It takes half a second to say. So why does it feel like the hardest thing in the world? The answer has nothing to do with strength, and it has nothing to do with courage. Everyone keeps telling you to just set boundaries, just say no, just speak up, just be more assertive. But here's the uncomfortable truth almost nobody wants to admit. For a lot of people, that advice isn't helping. It's actually making the guilt and anxiety worse. And the worst part, the more you try to follow that advice and fail, the more you start to believe something is fundamentally wrong with you. There isn't. If you've ever said yes when you desperately wanted to say no, if you've ever felt that heavy knot in your stomach just thinking about disappointing someone, then you already know it's not that simple. This is not a communication problem. It's not a confidence problem either. It's not even a people-pleasing problem in the way most people think. It's something much deeper, something that was built into you quietly over years, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to see. By the end of this video, you'll understand the real reasons setting boundaries feels so impossible for you, and the 4 specific shifts that actually make it easier without carrying crushing guilt every single time. These aren't tips, they're not scripts, they're the actual psychological roots, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. So let's start with the first thing almost everyone gets wrong. And I'll warn you now, this one might sting a little, because it did for me too. Think back when you were a kid. Imagine this. You were the responsible one in your family, the easy child, the one who never caused problems, the one everyone could count on. Maybe you were praised for it. Maybe adults said things like, "You're so mature," or "You never give us trouble." And somewhere in your mind, you filed that as, "This is who I need to be." Over time, being low maintenance and always there for others became part of who you are. It stopped being just something you do. It became part of your identity. Most boundary advice starts with tactics. Use this script. Say it calmly. Practice in the mirror. But here's what the research actually shows. According to psychologists studying self-concept and interpersonal behavior, the single biggest predictor of whether someone struggles with boundaries isn't their communication skills. It's how tightly their identity is tied to being liked. The real problem isn't that you don't know how to say no. The real problem is that your sense of being a good person has become fused with being agreeable, helpful, and low maintenance. Somewhere along the line, your brain learned their comfort equals my worth. Their approval equals my safety. Think about that equation for a second. If someone else's comfort equals your worth, then anytime you make someone uncomfortable, you literally feel like you're worth less. That's not logic. That's a survival strategy. And survival strategies don't care whether they're still needed. They just run. So when you say no, it doesn't just feel like setting a limit. It feels like you're violating part of your identity. It feels like you're saying, "I'm not a good person anymore." Psychologists call this identity fusion. Your self-worth got wired to keeping other people comfortable. That's why simple scripts don't work. You're not fighting a skill issue. You're fighting an identity threat. And identity threats feel like truth. Here's a simple test. The next time you want to say no to someone, notice what your first thought is. If it's, "What will they think of me?" that's identity fusion talking, not your conscience. But even when people understand this intellectually, most still struggle to follow through. Because identity isn't the deepest layer. Something older is underneath it. Something your body learned before your mind could argue with it. And that's what we need to look at next. Let's talk about guilt, because guilt is the thing that actually stops you in the moment. Your friend asks you for a favor you really don't have the energy for. You already know you should say no. But the moment the thought crosses your mind, a wave of guilt hits you, even before you've said anything. Before you've said anything. That detail is everything. That guilt didn't appear out of nowhere. A lot of us were raised in environments where being good meant never causing discomfort to others. Saying no wasn't just rude, it felt dangerous. It could mean anger, rejection, or withdrawal of love. For some people, a parent went cold and silent when they didn't comply. For others, saying no led to an argument or a look or a punishment. The brain is a pattern machine. It remembers. So your brain learned a rule. If other people are uncomfortable, I'm not safe. Most people think guilt is a moral compass, a signal that they're doing something wrong. But often, it's just an alarm system that was installed a long time ago. And here's the crucial thing about alarms. Alarms are designed to get your attention, not tell you the truth. The moment you consider setting a boundary, the alarm goes off. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your brain was trained to associate their discomfort with your danger. You can even be fully aware, intellectually, that this person will not punish you for saying no. They're a reasonable adult. And yet, the alarm still fires. Because alarms don't care about logic, they care about patterns. Until you separate the alarm from the truth, every boundary will feel like a moral failure. The question to start asking yourself when guilt appears isn't, did I do something wrong? It's, is this a warning or is this just an old alarm going off again? So now we know it's not just identity, but if guilt is just an alarm, then why does it sometimes feel so overwhelming that you completely shut down? Because guilt doesn't only live in your mind, it moves into your body, and when it does, your body takes over. That's what we need to understand next. Your coworker asks you to stay late for the 3rd time this month. You already have plans. You know you should say no. But the second you open your mouth, your heart starts racing, your throat feels tight, your mind goes blank, and before you even realize what's happening, you hear yourself saying, yeah, sure, no problem. Then you drive home replaying it in your head, furious at yourself. Sound familiar? This isn't just guilt. This is your nervous system entering a threat response. To your body, rejection, disapproval, or conflict can feel like danger, so it activates survival mode. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Most people know fight, flight, and freeze, but fawn is the one that ruins boundary setters. Fawn is when you immediately make yourself agreeable to stop the threat. You smile, you apologize, you cave. Not because you want to, but because your body chose fawn to survive. That's why you over-explain. That's why you apologize even when you've done nothing wrong. That's why you backtrack or abandon the boundary completely. Not because your boundary was unreasonable, but because your nervous system was trying to escape the discomfort as quickly as possible. You cannot think your way out of a body that's in survival mode. You have to create a sense of safety first. Here's something you can try immediately. Before you say no in a high-pressure moment, take one slow exhale, not an inhale, an exhale. A long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It literally tells your body, the threat is passing. You don't need to fawn. You're safe. It takes 3 seconds, and it creates just enough space between the alarm and your response. That 3-second gap is where your real answer lives. But even understanding all of this still leaves one important question. Some people eventually learn to set boundaries without their body completely shutting down. What's actually different about them? That's the final piece, and it's the most important one. Real change doesn't happen when you learn a new script. It happens when you slowly change what it means to be a good person. And I want to be honest with you about something. This is slow. It doesn't happen after watching one video. It doesn't happen after one successful no. It happens gradually, in small moments, as you test a new belief and find that the world doesn't end. For a long time, many of us carried a belief that sounded something like this. A good person is always available. A good person never disappoints anyone. A good person keeps everyone happy. Read those out loud and notice how they feel. Notice that every single one of them is about other people. Not one mentions you. But if being good means always being available, you'll eventually abandon yourself to serve everyone else. If being good means never disappointing people, you'll spend your life betraying your own needs. The people who eventually get better at boundaries don't become fearless. They don't stop caring what others think. They simply adopt a new definition. A good person also protects their energy. A good person honors their limits. A good person tells the truth about what they can and cannot give. And here's the part that trips most people up. A good person can disappoint someone and still be a good person. These two things can be true at the same time. Here's the line that changes everything for a lot of people. Someone else's disappointment is not proof that you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's simply evidence that you've stopped abandoning yourself. This isn't selfishness. This is integrity. Every time you betray your own limits to keep someone else comfortable, you teach yourself that your needs don't matter. Every time you hold a limit, even if it's uncomfortable for both of you, you teach yourself something different, that you are worth protecting. And when your identity starts including the belief, I am someone who respects my own limits, the guilt doesn't disappear overnight. It stops running the show. Because now, saying no longer threatens who you are. It supports who you're becoming. And here's what nobody tells you. The moment you say no and stay with it, even with the guilt, even with the discomfort, you become slightly more yourself than you were before. These are the 4 real reasons most people struggle with boundaries. Once you understand these patterns, you stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself. But understanding something intellectually is one thing. Actually changing it in real life is another. So let me give you something practical you can start doing today. If even one of these 4 points hit you, I want you to try 3 small things this week. First, pick one situation where you've been saying yes when you really wanted to say no. Practice one honest, kind no without over-explaining. A complete sentence. Not I can't because or I'm sorry but, just I'm not going to be able to do that. Done. Second, when the guilt shows up after, and it will, don't try to fix it. Don't call them back. Don't apologize. Just sit with it for 60 seconds and remind yourself, this is an old alarm. It doesn't mean I did something wrong. Third, write down your old definition of a good person, and next to it, write your new one. Something that includes you. Something that says you matter too. You don't have to believe it fully yet, just write it. That's where real change begins. And here's something I want you to remember. The next time guilt shows up after you say no, don't automatically assume you've done something wrong. Sometimes that guilt isn't a warning sign. Sometimes it's proof that you're finally changing. That feeling you're scared of, that hollow, uncomfortable space after you say no and before you know how the other person will react, that space is where your new self lives. Step into it. Stay in it long enough and it stops feeling like loss. It starts feeling like room. If this video helped you understand something you've been carrying for years, subscribe. Because we're uploading more videos like this every week. Honest, research conversations about the patterns that quietly control people's lives and how to finally break them. And if you know someone who explains away every exhausted yes they ever gave, send us to them. Not with a message, just send it. They'll understand why. The more you watch, the more these shifts become natural. Your future self will thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.